All right, we are live. We're going to talk some Tesla for the first half hour. Going to give you a bit of a lemonade update, a little, I don't know, potpourri, popcorn, some Q&A in the last 15 minutes. And that's what you can expect from us. Our hearts go out to all of you.
See, that was the way to do it. Can't mistake it for a Nazi salute. The palm, I think the palm has to be up. That's the key
Palms up.
feature, I think.
Palm up, right?
Yeah. Although now you're just a Nazi apologist. That's all I know. So
That's
welcome
true.
to Nazi Apologist Central here at Rebellionaire. We are going to be apologizing for all things Elon Musk.
No, I mean, maybe not everything, but
no,
some things.
Yeah. I was going to say, in all seriousness, though, like, I mean, that just seemed like so obviously not what he was intending to do. Now, like, I've seen some people say maybe he was potentially trolling, but any outlet or person who's saying Elon was actually trying to do a Nazi salute because he hates Jews or is a fascist or whatever, just loses credibility in my mind. And there's a lot of blocking that I think people were doing, seeing some of the trolls or just people who have this conclusion that Elon is this evil oligarch that took control of the government and now is going to, for some reason, attack the Jews. And like, meanwhile, the Anti-Defamation League, like Michael Eisenberg and Ben Shapiro, at least those are just the two that I saw, were like, no, don't be dumb. That was not like Elon like actually supports the Jews. So yeah. This whole thing is just...
He actually visited Auschwitz and did he visit Israel too? Since the attack on Israel,
I thought he went to the didn't he go to the Wailing Wall? I could be wrong on that, but I thought he did.
Yeah, so Elon's a big supporter of the Hebrews, and he had Benjamin Netanyahu at the Fremont factory about 2 years ago. So yeah, it's fake news. Elon was so excited. He's super awkward. He's got Asperger's or whatever. And you can tell even when he was strutting out on the stage, he's very awkward, but he had so much energy. He was so excited, thrilled with the election results. Elon was so, and like glad that the first day was going smoothly. So he was super excited. So I'm guessing his gestures kind of like got carried away a little bit. And like I think he was like so happy with people who voted for Trump that like he just was just like very exaggerated. So I think it's obvious to anyone with a brain that he wasn't suddenly giving a Hitler salute. And what was really disappointing to me, Matt, was CNN saying, "Oh, well, you know, our viewers are smart, so we'll let them draw their own conclusions," like implying that if you don't conclude that it was some kind of fascist salute, that you're dumb. That's what really bothered me. And then PBS, as you were saying.
Yeah, so PBS, I saw like had some, I don't know if it was an article or a post, I saw it on X, of like Elon Musk appears to give fascist salute during Trump's ceremony. So that was just disappointing. I mean, this is an organization that receives government funding, public taxpayer funding, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I kind of hold PBS in high esteem, I think probably mostly for nostalgic reasons. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, I'd watch Nova with my dad and kind of like learn stuff about, you know, the world through that. And like Antiques Roadshow, like all these like kind of, I don't know, harmless things that were... Sesame Street, yeah. There was one other one I was thinking of that I used to watch that was just like all the Ken Burns documentaries, like super high quality content. And I think in my mind there's still that. But when I saw that really stupid, you know, post from them, I was like, okay, well, that's just like absurd. And then my wife yesterday was actually watching the inauguration, and she was watching it on PBS with the kids. You know, it's just the historic result. Like, here's how power transfers in the United States. Most of our kids weren't old enough to kind of remember how that goes. So she was just watching it, and like as people were speaking, she was saying like there was all this commentary about how the Republicans just hate government, and really the Democrats are like the pro-government party, and so it's kind of unfortunate what they're doing. There was all this commentary, and I don't really care what your opinion is on where you fall on that side of the aisle, but to be kind of undercutting the actual, I don't know, pomp and circumstance of the ceremony and with your own political commentary, especially when you're taxpayer funded. I just found that really, really disappointing. So that was just those two, the fascist post and then the commentary that my wife said she saw when she was watching it live was frustrating. And she said actually she switched to CBS and that was way better, which I never would have guessed would have been the case.
Yeah, we thought about PBS as like neutral and balanced, and they also have these like really good documentaries on the radio, and they're so like well produced, and they have the voice and the music and all that stuff. And yeah, it's disappointing, and you would have thought like the media would have learned its lesson after the Fine People hoax, where Trump clearly denounced the white nationalists that were at the Charlottesville rally, and then they acted like he called them fine people, which is not the case. So like this is a clear hoax by the media, and they're just continuing with these same tricks and
same tactics, and just doubling down on it. Like it seems very, very clearly like a failed strategy given the election results and what Elon has done with X. Like people are finding their own voice now, and it's like very easy to discredit a lot of the stuff that the media puts out there. But like the fact that they're still going for it, it's like, all right, well, I guess like if they're not changing, it's like a football team in the fourth quarter and they're down by, I don't know, 20 points or something like that. And they're like, you know what, we're going to stick with the same playbook. And it's just like, you've got no answer. You're not going to change anything. No adjustments needed. Like that's not. So I think they're accelerating their own demise, which is probably a good thing. I mean, I wish they would just like prioritize the truth, but if they're not going to do that, I think they're going to, they're right. Like their audience is wise and smart, and that's why they're not following them anymore after like look what's happening to viewership. So CNN saying like, hey, our viewers can draw their own conclusions. Well, they are, and they're concluding that, they're sick of these lies, and that's why they're opting for other alternative news sources.
Yeah. All right. So what's next, Matt?
Well, yeah, let's stick on the inauguration topic for a second. Elon's post or speech. I think the one thing you mentioned how enthusiastic he was. It did kind of remind me of like his enthusiasm when the Shanghai plant launched in Tesla. And he like did that like weird dance and like took his coat off, and it's just like he's a bit awkward. Oh, now Bradford's doing a striptease. That is going to end up in the CNN article. So yeah, I mean, just like I think it's really that simple of an explanation. But I'm kind of wondering what else stuck out from you from Inauguration Day in general. I mean, I think the one thing Elon was obviously really excited about was the kind of Mars focus on that. I mean, it's sort of a moonshot mission, but it's Mars. So just kind of curious what your thoughts were on everything else that happened yesterday.
Well, regardless of who gets elected, I enjoy watching Inauguration Days. It makes me very proud to be American and feel very grateful that we have this system in power. Right now, South Korea is struggling, with their president. It seems like if you're a president in South Korea, you end up dead or in jail, with like your whole family dead or in jail or something like that. It's really awful. So they're struggling with their transitions of power, and luckily we have that down. It was cool.
Shout out to George Washington, by the way.
I don't know if is the inauguration on Martin Luther King Day every time, or
no? I don't think it's always, because I think Martin Luther King Day is always the first or the third Monday in January, and I think I thought Inauguration Day is always January 20th, but I could be wrong on that.
I thought Trump gave a good speech when he was on the teleprompter. He kind of went to his tropes when he was at other sites. And it was cool to see him like sign the executive orders and have a live crowd be there later in the day. And when the executive orders he signed was to establish Doge, and already there's like 4 lawsuits against Doge. They really don't want Elon helping the U.S. government get lean and more efficient.
Sadly predictable, but yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious what comes of it. And already they removed work from home for federal employees. So there's going to be a big fight. I'm curious to see what happens from it. Trump talked about ending the EV mandates. There was never a mandate that people had to buy EVs or that the government had to buy EVs. So I'm curious what they end up stripping from the Green New Deal, which is the Inflation Reduction Act. Is it the $7,500 per car? I'm guessing they'll want to keep the incentives that encourage battery making in the U.S. and bringing those minerals into the U.S. So Tesla was down a bit today. I think in general, Elon did well yesterday, except for the whole drama. I think he's
that was obviously an ill-advised gesture, right? We can agree. Like, don't accidentally put your hand out like this. I mean,
so I think he's created a lot of goodwill. We didn't have any clients calling today, like telling us that we have to sell their Tesla stock. So I think like your average person is smart enough to figure it out, or maybe they're being quiet about it for now.
Yeah, so it was a really cool experience. I agree, and like one of the things I enjoyed watching it with my kids, or actually my wife did, and then she kind of filled me in on it later. But like my 9-year-old daughter was asking questions like, "Oh, it looks like that person doesn't like Trump. Like, why are they even there?" And so it was kind of cool to answer like those sorts of questions about like the peaceful transition of power, like you said. Like it really is something that I think is very easy to take for granted and just be like, oh, look at like petty so-and-so, like not applauding at this particular thing. But honestly, I think it's a tribute to our democracy that we even have this and that people show up.
To be fair, a lot of Trump's points, the way he framed them, like you wouldn't be standing up to applaud, because basically he was implying that Biden did nothing during his whole presidency, which isn't true either. Right. People may not like the policies that happened and all that, but it's not true that he didn't do anything.
Yeah, so I actually like some of the policies that he put out there. Like the CHIPS Act, I think was actually reasonably smart, and a lot of the stuff that was in the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, I think it was way too bloated, but I think there's a lot of policies in there that were pretty good. So I agree with you.
And the whole thing with TikTok, I think, started an important conversation where China bans a lot of these platforms, and the U.S. companies can't even enter into China, and they expect the U.S. to just let them operate normally in the U.S. So I think the whole banning of TikTok, which allegedly Trump started, that I think that was a positive in getting that conversation going. No, allegedly Trump started it.
Oh, and then he reversed it? I guess I hadn't heard that piece.
No, he started it like toward the end of his presidency.
Okay. Well, it is funny that now at the beginning of his second presidency, he's like, don't worry, I'll save you.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be the politics podcast here, but it was a historic day, so in which Elon was involved in. So I think we do need to at least touch on that. But let's go to kind of more fundamentals. You've been asking me for a long time how FSD version 12.6 would end up being on my hardware 3 Model Y. Just got that over the weekend, and I think it's safe to say that the first drive was a train wreck. Very, very bad. You saw the video. It was a pretty big regression.
We'll post it up here so you can check that out. We put it on our YouTube channel.
Highlights for anyone who maybe didn't watch it. It was pretty good on the highway. So I would say slightly improved on this earlier version of a somewhat straightforward surface street. But then we got into downtown Ann Arbor, and it was, I mean, it was like accelerating towards a car that was stopped, and then there was an accident beyond that it was accelerating towards. So it was just really bad. It very clearly needed to be in the other lane, and it was accelerating. So that was rough. Then it was like going 9 miles an hour and extremely unsure what to do on a street that was wide open and like very like apparent what the right course of action was. So overall, just
there
a
was
regression.
There was a whole lane that was covered with snow. So I think I was wondering if that threw it off.
But it shouldn't. Like, I mean, with the amount of training, time that they've had, like, I mean, it's not like it was fully covered in snow. And even if so, like I've driven on FSD on fully snow covered streets before, and it's actually been reasonably good recently. So there's some sort of weird regression going on with this. But what was your thought after seeing that video? Were you concerned at all?
Well,
or
it worried me a bit. It appears one of your cameras is a bit foggy on your left side. I'm curious, how have your drives gone since then? Has it redeemed itself? And do you think you'll end up calling this AI 3, or do you think it'll stay hardware 3?
So I think I'm not bought into this whole AI 3 versus hardware 3 thing the way that you are. I don't upgrade it or like, downgrade it based on that. But if I were to do so, I would say it's definitely downgraded to hardware 3. I mean, I think that the drives since were very good. I would say probably a slight improvement from what they had been before. The thing I noticed is just slightly faster decision making. So like there's a gap and it needs to turn, and it goes right away, rather than it used to kind of like wait half a second and then turn. And that can, especially when there's a tight gap, that just leads to the car that you're pulling out in front of potentially needing to slow a little bit, and it just makes the entire experience a little bit more stressful for the passenger. Having driven V13 on your cars, I was like, okay, that issue is pretty much gone on AI4 cars, we'll say. But I would say it's much improved on this version. I probably need to take it back to Ann Arbor to try that particular route again, see if there was just a one-time fluke. You mentioned the camera issue I had. There was some condensation on the door pillar camera.
Yeah.
So maybe that was...
I have a theory, Matt.
Okay.
I think they have it on like a cautious mode for 12.6. So I got it for my hardware 3 Model Y, and it was like very cautious pulling out. It was very cautious in the roundabouts. Seemed to go much slower than my AI4 cars did. So I'm wondering if there's like they built in a bit of extra caution until they get a little more confident with the system at Tesla.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, it seems pretty clear that it was not as natural and smooth as like the early versions of version 12. So there does seem to be some sort of tweaking of the parameters. I mean, hopefully it's not just like that the training that they've had to redo has caused some big regression in smoothness. I think it's more likely what you're saying, that they want to be extra careful that there's not some accident, and especially in snowy weather. I mean, this was actually one of my concerns a couple of years ago, where FSD would just drive exactly the same on a snow-covered icy road as on like a totally dry road in California at 70 degrees, which was like, I'm honestly a little bit surprised there never was like a terrible accident, because it was just so like inherently unsafe. So like they've clearly programmed that now, where it slows down and accelerates a little bit more slowly, brakes a little bit more quickly. And so maybe they're doing some other safety, slightly more conservative approach, which makes the overall experience a little bit less pleasant, let's say, for the passenger, for the driver, but reduces the risk of a pretty bad accident, which could delay the rollout of FSD more generally. So if that's the case, I would support that.
I think optimistically they're collecting a lot more data now on it. So people are engaging their systems when there's snow on the roads. Tesla's getting that data. It's kind of, I think it would know when there's a loss of traction, so they could automatically capture that clip if they want. sometimes it gets it fishtails a little bit, and then the car beeps at you, and it may like force you to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing it'll capture those too. So I think there'll be a lot of improvement that comes from this winter as well.
Yeah. So I was actually, it's interesting you say the thing about the data. I was actually talking to a acquaintance of mine who's a Tesla owner, but a bit more casual one. So
Okay.
he keeps getting FSD trials, and he's like, yeah, like I've had FSD for like 3 months, and he's like, they'll take it off for a couple weeks, and then they offer me a new trial. And so I get it again. And so like, he's like, I part of me just thinks they're doing it just to get more data. And I was like, oh, that actually could be the case. I think from the way that I think about it, I just assume they're trying to get him to like upsell and actually buy FSD or rent it, lease it. But it could be the case that they just want even more data too, especially with how much more compute they're bringing online. Their compute has increased significantly more than their FSD miles in the past 3 to 6 months, let's say, right? So I wonder if that might be becoming a constraint or at least something that they are wishing they had a little bit more data on.
Yep. All right, let's hit the next topic.
All right, and while we transition, just a quick note for anyone who has a question, put it in the comments, and we'll come back to those towards the end. So if there's something you want us to talk about, comments, questions, anything, put that in there, and we'll hit it towards the end.
And while we're talking videos, my Rebellionaire video is doing quite well. Over 10,000 views. I did it with Scott Walter, the Tesla bot nerd and the automation expert. He had some really interesting ideas and insights around how Tesla is going to use the Rebellionaire. So check that out.
Yeah, that was I don't think it actually goes up like that. We're just like these boomer, social media guys. It's like, it's over here, and it just
we'll do it in post
down here.
Hopefully, you can add it later to.
I think it was actually showing up underneath. That's the way that it showed up for the other one. Plus, it's in the comments right now for anyone watching. Before we do move on from FSD, though, I'm a bit curious. Have you had updates on your FSD and your AI for cars recently, and have you noticed any changes? The one thing, we'll answer that first.
Yeah, so my Cybertruck's seeming to not know its size as well, so it's going over curbs a little more often. It's more like the soft curbs, but it's doing well. I've had no safety critical interventions on either version 13 or 12.6. So overall, I'm still very encouraged.
Did you see the video? This was probably the worst version 13 video I've seen, where it was a Cybertruck kind of going through a curve, but it wasn't an overly sharp curve, and it just kind of like hit the right. It, like for no reason, it kind of turned to the right and then curbed both the wheels, and then the hubcaps flew off, basically like just destroyed those rims. Had you seen that one?
No.
So that's, not a safety critical incident, but probably a concerning one at the very least. And I think you're right that it just seems like it doesn't exactly know its size. And that one was a little bit odd for me because it was like it actually just kind of turned right for no apparent reason instead of smoothly following the curve. So it's not there yet, but it does seem that like very massive strides are being made on the AI for cars, and man, I am just trying to find a reason to upgrade right now. But I think that my problem is like I want the like the charging capability, like the outboard like vehicle to home capability of the Cybertruck. I want like the comfort of the Model X, and I definitely want like the AI for hardware. But like I can't get all of those things in one vehicle, and
you
I
need
also
like a cyber van.
I do need a cyber van that seats 9 because my family is large and getting larger in just a couple weeks time. But let's move on from Tesla. We do have earnings next week, so I think next week what we'll do is take a quick walk through the model that we have for earnings per share estimates. We'll kind of go through the assumptions I have there, publish my thoughts on where margins are going to be, and kind of talk through some of the interesting stuff going on this quarter. I think the big thing going on is we had 11 gigawatt hours of deployments on stationary storage. So Could see some interesting margins there. That was, I think it was over 30% gross margin a couple quarters ago, if memory serves me. So we'll take a look at that and give you my detailed earnings per share estimate. I guess that'll be the day before earnings. So looking forward to that. But let's talk Lemonade. We've been, I think 2 months ago in November, we were doing a lot of Lemonade talking, a lot of Lemonade posting. The stock was just going absolutely parabolic at the time. And it's fair to say we were pretty happy with our call on that. We owned about 1% of the company at the time, as you can kind of see from our public 13F filings.
And that's as of September 30th. Yeah.
As of September 30th. Yep. So, the big kind of spike happened with the Q3 earnings, which was, I think it was late October, maybe it was early November. And then it continued with the Investor Day, that was in early November. But we've been a little bit more quiet over the last couple of weeks and months. And have we lost faith in Lemonade? What's the latest on Lemonade, Bradford?
All right. So what you'll see from our 13F filing, and this will be as of December 31st, and it'll come out in February, is that our ownership in Lemonade will have declined by more than half. So like as it shot up, our ownership declined. And then what you'll see from our next 13F filing, I'm confident you'll see that it'll be above 1% again. So
quick caveat here, though, that's for Q1, and we are in the middle of Q1, so something could change.
Yeah, something could change, but so it ended up going essentially from like around $17 all the way to $50. And we believe that it's still underpriced there, but we felt like the price just would not sustain at that level. So we trimmed back significantly. We still wholeheartedly believe in it. And recently you had the California fires. So maybe we'll get to that in a second. So do you want to talk about anything before we get to the California fires, Matt?
Well, maybe let's just continue the thought on what we've done with the Lemonade position, and then we can come back to why we were able to essentially buy at what we think is a pretty nice discount, and certainly a discount from where we had sold or trimmed.
Yeah, so sentiment cooled down, and what's crazy is there's still a very high level of short interest in the company. That's not integral to our thesis. We released a update to our video after their investor day. It was in late November, or update to our valuation, where we essentially believe that Lemonade is worth, I'm not sure the specific number in the video, but like it's around $130 today. So if you were to forward that clock a bit, essentially we think in like 3 years or so, it may warrant a valuation of $190. And the stock got all the way down to around $32 a share because of the California wildfires. Now, there's a lot of context there in California. Maybe, Matt, you can kind of rewind the clock to the last investor day and what has changed with Lemonade and homeowners insurance in California real quick.
Yeah, and the big shout out to the Lemonade community, who's done great work on saying, is this California fire risk actually a big risk for the company? Because that's a really important question. Yeah. So I think one of the good pieces of sleuthing that someone did, and I apologies to whoever that is, I'm not remembering offhand who it was that pulled this chart together, but they actually shared back in their 2022 Investor Day this map that showed all the different homeowners policies that they had, and essentially when they updated their customer lifetime value model, which is essentially an AI model that attempts to price risk and calculate essentially what is the lifetime value of this particular customer. A lot of the dots that we're showing as green in specific locations for homeowners insurance in the past, when they updated their AI model, a bunch of them turned to like yellow and red. And a huge portion of those red dots were focused in California. So what that was really implying, and what they said at the time in that Investor Day, was that they had essentially been underpricing their homeowners insurance in California because they did not have an accurate assessment of the risk of claims. So
and what's interesting is there hadn't been a fire in that area for 60 years, or like a bad one. But it had already been marked as a fire prone area. And there's like severities of fire proneness.
Yeah.
I should move my mic here. So
yeah, so this is something that they've been doing for the last couple of years, is really focusing on doing non-renewals of their home business. So this has actually been like a headwind to their growth, is they've been non-renewing a lot of customers that they're actually just saying, hey, we mispriced this on the risk front. So they're growing despite the fact that they're like choosing not to pursue a lot of their business just because they think that the risk was higher than they initially estimated. And then actually on the most recent earnings call in, I think it was early November, could maybe late October, they actually talked about a lot of the non-renewals on home that they're doing and how they like front end loaded a lot of those into like Q3 of this most recent year. And then they finished a lot more non-renewals in Q4. So their home business has been shrinking as they're like not really trying to grow it actively and are in fact, non-renewing a lot of these. So I suspect that the risk is really a lot lower than a lot of the selling would kind of indicate. Jim Chanos, oddly enough, who a lot of people will probably be familiar with as a Tesla Q, kind of, he got a lot of the surface level facts right, but like didn't go deep enough to really understand what was going on with Tesla. He's doing the exact same thing with Lemonade now, and it's kind of hilarious. He's like, look, they've got a lot of California exposure. Like, clearly that they're going to go bankrupt. I'm oversimplifying, obviously, but he was actually out there after these fires, like pointing out how significant the risk is for Lemonade to essentially like go broke because of these fires.
Chanos is still short, so
yeah.
His fund is shuttered. He's probably running private family money, maybe his closest friends like Jim Grant, Charlie Grant, possibly. But for him to bother to comment on it, maybe he's just still in the game of investing, but I'm guessing he's still short, but we'll see.
Yeah, I would suspect he is, at least on a personal level. But I mean, that's just like, you're right. Like you can go to their book of business, they break it out by geography, and you can see, oh, there's a lot of California exposure, ergo, that they could go bankrupt. And to be clear, there is some risk that, we're just wrong on this. And they did have a lot of exposure in Palisades, either on the home front or even on car. They've got a lot of car exposure in California. But my suspicion, and I think the conclusion a lot of the, kind of Lemonade Bulls community are coming to when they are diving into this, is that the exposure is nowhere near what you might expect it to be given the magnitude of the sell-off. So we were bullish on the company at $50, but we just thought it kind of needed a little bit of like breathing room after the huge rally. So honestly, we were pretty happy to be able to pick up more shares at a much lower price. And this is one of the things we talk with clients and prospects about all the time, is like, there's this theory that like you've got to like hodl all the time, and if you ever sold Tesla or Apple or Amazon or any of these companies that went on this stellar trajectory, and if you like zoom out on a 10-year, you're like, yeah, never sell. Like that's the easiest answer. But you like, if you look at any 1 year chart, like you're going to see some really steep peaks and valleys. So that's why we do a lot of the trimming and adding that we do. I mean, you're able to take some gains from a huge winner like Lemonade and basically plow it into Tesla or other companies that then continue the rally from there, and then essentially have a chance to buy back at a lower price. It's it was really a good tactic. I think that I'm really happy with the way that worked out for most of our Rebellionaire clients.
Yeah, there was a chunk where this wasn't true for all Rebellionaire clients, but there was a chunk where we did a big trim of Lemonade and we added to Tesla at $357 a share. And despite the sell-off today, I think it's still well above 400 today. I didn't see where it closed, but
it's flirting with 420, obviously.
Yeah, it seems to have the 420 magnet. I think that there should be like some kind of magnet merch that Tesla sells.
Oh wow, it rallied. It ended at 424 actually.
All right. Yeah, so that worked out quite well for us. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Just because we trimmed at a great price, and that doesn't mean we're always going to like pick the top of a stock or anything like that. Also, just because we bought recently, it doesn't mean you should, or that
Yeah.
or that it's hit some kind of bottom. It could go lower from here. But we think they're very well run. They're setting up to be the low cost insurance company. They're tech first and AI first, and they've been doing AI for, I'll misquote this, but I think it's like they're getting close to like 9 years.
Yeah.
So like they didn't just start doing AI 2 years ago when OpenAI made it cool for everybody to talk about AI.
Yeah, their last investor day, the 2022 one, it was literally 2 weeks before ChatGPT launched, and so like they were talking about AI like back then and like how it was really helping to improve their processes. And back then, like nobody was talking about large language models, but they were just like they were using it for like pricing and for like automating processes. And so as like these LLMs have become available, they're incorporating that into their business model. But it's just like the path for them to get to like extreme levels of profitability seems really clear to me. And so I just love being able to buy them at what seems to us like a discount right now. So I
Yeah.
was really happy to see it run up like that, and honestly pretty happy to see it come back down. But like you said, we're not going to get everything right, and this is not investment advice. We're just kind of sharing our own thoughts,
Mhm.
and we've also got some stuff wrong. I mean, Bloom Energy is one. Maybe we can talk about it at some point where I think we got the thesis wrong, but actually ended up with or got the thesis right, I should say.
Your timing wrong.
Got the timing wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so ended up losing some money for clients on that one. So
Let me,
we're not going to only cherry pick the good stuff
yeah,
here.
I want to provide some evidence that Lemonade really has AI chops. So, a lot of these companies, they're using AI to interact with customers, whether it's with chatbots or with emails or whatever. And I'd say generally it's a mixed bag experience where Lemonade 9 months ago, 22% of their customer emails were answered in a full automated fashion with no input from a human. Now they've gone to a point where 46% of their emails are fully automated, and their business is growing at the same time. So it's not just a 2x in how much is automated. So it's to the point they're automating it to the point where they can really trust it to give an answer. So I think it's a combination of using AI to understand the nature of a question or the nature of what's going on, and then using some heuristics, using some rules in the response that it gives. Um, so customers have rated the responses 4 stars, which really blows me away to have fully those responses, the AI responses, 4 stars. So I think that's really fantastic and a testament. I've also done a little project with our emails where I'm not feeding our customer data to a large language model, but I'm able to pull down a database of our customer emails and go through it, and like the next step is to kind of sort the emails, understand like the nature of what they're talking about. And you can use a private large language model where you're not sending it over the internet. It's a private server. They have these private models. There's something called LM Studio where you can run these models. And so that's the next step. It's going to be pretty messy. And I think it's going to be a lot harder than what I'm hoping. But I think AI is powering tremendous change. And Matt and I, as you could tell, are really excited about it.
Yeah, that's one thing actually, if we can pivot back to macro for a second. I mean,
Yeah.
we were talking a little bit the other day when you and I were just talking one-on-one about like what might happen with the combination of Doge stripping out some wasteful spending in the government, these tariffs that Trump is wanting to impose that could be inflationary. Let's be very sober about that. Probably will be inflationary. But that being a source of revenue, and then if you couple that with AI potentially increasing GDP growth and being a bit deflationary, also, like you could have this like really Goldilocks kind of situation where you've got like amazing economic growth, low unemployment, like moderate inflation, and the government trending towards a balanced budget, which is like kind of eliminates this ticking time bomb that we've been worried about for a while. So curious your thoughts to kind of expand on that. Like how scenario is that? Is that just like dreaming of what I hope might happen, or how realistic is that scenario?
I think adoption is still among like the early adopters with AI. So it hasn't become widespread yet. It's still with the nerds and tinkerers and people who think different. So like it's very popular on X when people are talking about AI. Also on YouTube, it's fairly popular. So it's more like a nerd thing, but as more and more large enterprise adopt it, there's just a huge AI push. Like we're looking at some other companies, but Palantir is an obvious one that's bringing. They basically brought logistics using AI to like logistics into a business, and a way to think about it, they call it the ontology. But it's like your understanding of the business, and using AI to really power the business. And their first target was large enterprise, so they started with the biggest, which is government, and the defense industry, and then they were trying like the largest enterprise, but then Carp was like struggling to sell it, so then they offered this thing called the AIP boot camp, where smaller businesses can bring their data, bring portions of their team, and check it out and begin to implement it. So I think it's about like for organizations like being bold enough to think that it can be additive, it can be helpful. I'm looking at 145,000 emails that I have on my private computer, but it's like all our emails to clients in the last 14 years. And that
for those who
like it sounds ridiculous to even attempt to like dig into that, right?
Yeah, well, but like I think for those who aren't familiar, who don't work with you like I do, they might not know like what a pain point this has been for you. I mean, people know that you do a lot of like hands-on research, like the mega pack counting, and that like requires time out of the office. You did the coast to coast trip on right when version 12 launched, just to see how it handled scenarios outside of California, and that is obviously going to take away from the time that you can be responding to emails, and you get a lot of emails. So like actually kind of managing that and like being responsive to clients is something that like we've been manually like working with, but trying to get like a better system where we're even more responsive to clients and not letting anything slip through the cracks, and freeing you up to be as productive as possible. Like that's extremely valuable to you and to the entire business and to our clients. And so I wonder if you could just talk through like what's the end goal that you see here, like for you in particular.
All right. Well, let me start at a higher level. But yeah, like automated emails would be great. So before I even tried this, I started something called email filtering, where I hardcore have like an allow list. So all our clients are on the allow list. We have different providers that are on the allow list. But if you're not on that list, your email gets quarantined. So then like I have to review it for it to get through. And a lot of the stuff that's on the quarantine list is just spam. So like that's one way of automating emails, but like another way would be to just read the intent and prioritize, what's a higher level, what's a higher priority to respond to. That would be a potential use of this. Um, Depending on how many emails we have from various clients, we can use this to just more cater our communication to our clients and the way they like to have information presented to them. So it's not to manipulate them, but like, there are certain people that are just like very high energy and they want the information and then they want to be gone. They don't want pleasantries. And then there's people who, like, if you don't do pleasantries, then they get really pissed off at you and may even like quit the relationship. Um, so, potentially using our AI to communicate in a better way, or our data to communicate in a better way, that would be really cool. But also, um, just like building up a dossier on our clients that we can refer to, like a one pager, where if we get a call from a client, people can pull up this dossier and be like, okay, these are the important things to remember. They want to be thinking about a Roth conversion every year. They want to grow their Tesla shares. They don't want you to sell their Apple stock. They have these kids and this is their names, things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different nuances, and we've got great software from a sort of off the shelf provider that helps us to manage all this stuff.
Yeah,
But like there
yeah.
are like random situations where you can't really program in some of that stuff, and so having another tool to kind of help would be interesting. So that's and plus I think it just helps us to stay on top of developments in AI and really understand the technology better as investors. So I think it really is a two-pronged benefit that we try to do stuff like this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd encourage people, like, think of a big project and try to have AI help you with it. At least have it help you brainstorm. And what really kicked me off or kicked things off was I was just talking with the AI um, about what we can do to automate the business, and then it just really sparked me to dive in.
Yeah. Well, and I think like this might even potentially sound bad to some people, like, oh, you're trying to like automate client relationships or something like that. It's actually the opposite. It's like we want to be able to serve them even better with like a higher level of quality where we're meeting more and more of their needs,
Mhm.
while also freeing up more of our time to like focus on research and other things. So it's allowing us to be more productive and to deliver a better product to our clients, both in terms of the communication, but also in the investment ideas. So I think we need to make sure that we're not like looking at using AI or any of these tools as like a negative just because it's different, or
Mhm.
like you're giving up the human touch. I think it can actually enhance the human touch, if done right. But speaking of AI, there was a post that came out recently that I think warrants some discussion. Can you see my screen here? I'm sharing. So this was some news that Mario Nafal, I assume that's how you say his name. Never actually heard that last name pronounced. Announced Trump investing 500 billion in AI infrastructure investment, or Trump to announce it. Essentially, OpenAI, SoftBank, Oracle are investing 500 billion dollars over 4 years to build out data center infrastructure. Notably included in this announcement is Sam Altman and OpenAI, and notably excluded from this announcement is Trump. So is this some slap in the face of Elon? Is this what do you kind of make of this story?
Well, it sounds to me like it's a deal, and Elon doesn't need to be in every scissor cutting kind of ceremony, right? Um, it's a lot of money. It seems a bit extreme, but they're only committing 100 billion initially, but plans to reach 500 billion. A chunk of this is from Masa-san. He's going to be investing in a bunch of AI startups if he hasn't already. OpenAI is going to be investing in compute. Um, Yeah.
which really means Microsoft's going to be investing, right?
Yeah.
And Microsoft
Yeah.
was already planning to invest tens of billions this year. I forget the exact number, but like, yeah, I mean, this is interesting. But I like part of me was actually thinking, all right, let's imagine Elon was involved in this announcement. Oh my gosh, the attacks he'd be getting on like, oh, you're getting like favorable governmental treatment for your little side project over at XAI. And so like I think honestly, just for keeping the relationship with Trump at an arm's length basis, I think this is actually kind of nice to see. But I'm curious to like learn more about this, because this is pretty slim on the details about why they're doing it, what specifically this will be, how these companies are going to interact together. There's a lot left to be. I think it kind of explained about the specifics of the particular deal, but also the longer term vision of what is the government's role in trying to bring these projects together. And like the name Stargate, that sounds like an Elon name. Honestly, I'm like kind of wondering why that name.
And I'm also a little skeptical, and we'll do the tight shot here. There we go. I'm a little skeptical that like $1 trillion of compute is just like going to solve this. So if this is all going to NVIDIA GPUs or whatever, I'm skeptical that just pushing a bunch of money on hardware will solve this. And the reason I say that is, for example, DeepSeek is a new open source model that just came out. It's called DeepSeek R1. It's from a Chinese group that also work with MIT. It's open source. It's supposed to be very competitive with the state of the art models. So Claude and O1 Mini, maybe O1. And it's you can run it on a laptop. Like you don't need to go to OpenAI or Claude to run this. So that's why I'm a little skeptical, and like spending all this money is the answer. I'm also dubious like that this whole approach, like we this all depends on tokenization, and then you got your transformers and the attention model, and this creates this huge compute mess.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if there's a way where you're not chopping up the words and needing this huge amount of compute, where you're keeping more of the context. And Meta just had this paper called the large context model, where they found that if you keep more of the context and you don't chop up the words as much, and you have more concepts. So I think it's large concept model, not context, concept model. They found that they were able to get similar results with 1/10 of the compute. So that would be like 1/10 of the infrastructure that these hundreds of billions of dollars are going to.
Yeah, and this is something you and I have been spending a lot of time kind of digging into lately. We might have some more things to share on that down the road, but I mean, the more I'm thinking about this, it seems pretty clear. Like, okay, we got some amazing results on these LLMs, and with what ChatGPT did, with the transformers and this tokenization, as you said. And so it's like, oh my gosh, like the more data you give to this thing, to this like framework of training, the better the results get. And so like AI is like an absolutely massive like prize, right? So, like, everyone is just like pouring billions of dollars, be like, okay, this thing works, like let's just go. But to me, it seems like this was the first like thing, but it doesn't follow to me that this set of training techniques is what will lead to AGI, or even if it does, like it's probably not the end state in terms of like the overall architectures. And so I do think, especially when you think of like the tokenization and how the whole thing is really just focused still, despite how complex and good these models have gotten, it still is just trying to predict the next word in a sequence. And so I think there's opportunities for framing a different way to try this entire, intelligence model, where like maybe you're bringing in some different tools. And like OpenAI is doing a bit of this with like taking time to think, and I think all the other Players are like trying to figure out a little bit like Daniel Kahneman's thinking fast and slow. Like, when do you need to really think about something versus when do you need to just look something up? And like, when do you maybe bring in a different type of tool? And so I think we're starting to see a little bit of that, but I think there might be, a flaw at the fundamental layer of this, which, like I said, maybe we can dig into that a little bit more when we have some ability to talk about what you and I are learning and digging into on that front.
So let's get to a couple questions if we got some.
Yeah, I don't think there were too many. So if anyone does have some questions, please do feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, we can just wrap.
Let me talk about an AI result I got. So I was listening to a speech that Daniel Schreiber gave in Hebrew to a group of policymakers. They may have also been lawmakers. And he was talking about AI infrastructure, how basically like the US and others were owning this. And he's in Israel, and there's a lot of folks at Lemonade that have a lot of love for Israel. It's kind of where they started, and then they went right to New York. And so they really care a lot about Israel, and they think that there's this huge opportunity. So he was pitching them on either like an AI infrastructure moonshot, or like at least reducing the amount of regulations that they have in Israel. And I was listening to it. I was looking at the captions that X did, and they weren't good. The captions weren't good. I don't speak Hebrew. But I could tell, based off of some of the technical jargon, that it was being missed, like the translation was bad. And so what I did was I set up. I have O1 Pro right now, so I'm a sucker that's paying $200 a month. But basically, you get the voice thing on your phone, and it's unlimited. Eventually, like, the conversations run too long and you have to stop the conversation and start another one, but basically it's unlimited. So I had it listen to a speech, and it would listen to like a paragraph until Daniel would take a breath, and then it would translate. It would vocalize the translation in English.
Wow, that's really cool.
and it has a text thing. So then I was able to like capture all that text and put it on X and say, hey, here's what he really said.
Yeah, and I read through that. It was pretty impressive. I mean, that's one of the things that, like, all these companies do that, but so many of them do it horribly, right? Like the YouTube. I don't know if you ever see like the YouTube translations or even just the transcriptions. They're like always a mess. Like if you're trying to read only those, it doesn't really work. I got one. I got a voicemail from Tesla the other day because I was looking at upgrading, and Apple transcribed this one sentence as, "I just wanted to check in to see how your experience with the husband." I was like, okay, I'm sure that's exactly what that said. So like Apple, who's like touting their Apple Intelligence right now, is just such a train wreck on this front, and it cracks me up that like this technology's out there, like this translation and even transcription. It should be a no-brainer for all these companies, yet so many of them are still struggling with it. You can see where the state of the art is going on this.
Detecting impersonators on X. Like, X should have all the data. Like, they have the account data. They know when someone changes their handle to something that's resembling your handle. They know when someone changes their profile pic to a profile pic that already was in existence. The handle was already in existence, and they're mimicking that. And then they change their bio to mimic your bio, and it should be trivial.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe I
Well, Elon basically said it was trivial when he was going on before the deal closed about all the bots and how it's like 40% of all the accounts were all the bots, and we're going to clean those up. And I was like, yeah, Elon, let's do it. And then here we are, 2 years later, and it's still a disaster. And even like trying to report outright impersonators is just like it's a mess. That there's so many of them. The process is terrible. You still have to upload your ID like all the time, and so I just don't do it for the most part now. And people, I think, know that we've got the Rebellionaire logo, which helps.
So X has the data. They have the account level data. They know what's changing. they have the images, so they can see the profile pic is similar to a profile pic that's in existence, that account's been at that name for a longer date. They have all that, and like AI could do image recognition. Come on, Elon, let's
Yeah.
make it happen. Let's make it happen. If someone
Yeah,
has X or XAI, let's get it done.
I had one the other day where I got like 19 notifications like all at once, and I was like, oh, like so something must have gone viral. But it was just like this one person spamming all my like replies with the exact same like, oh, Mr. like Santa Yoshi helped me like make $17,000 in 1 week. Check him out. And I was like, come on, X, like you gotta fix that. So it's frustrating for sure. Well, we're at an hour. I'm not seeing any questions, so we can end it there for now. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.